now what Republicans? First, let me just say thank you for coming. This is the third Politicon. Something I've told people outside of this event is that the MVP of Politicon is on our stage today. That's Michael Steele.
Thank you very much.
We all talk about how Michael kind of represents what this event is about. He's walking around the hallways, taking pictures with everybody, answering questions, has a lot of patience, does a lot of panels, so thank you. You've helped make this a success by yourself. The first Politicon, if you remember, we only had a couple hundred tickets sold with a couple of weeks left. We ended up with like 3,000 people. This weekend we're going to have 10,000 people, so thank you for coming to Politicon. This guy over here is John Phillips, your moderator. John and I are, we're frequent debate partners on CNN. Who wins those debates? Okay, I do, thank you. John hosts a radio show on KABC 790 called The Drive Home with Jillian Barberie.
That's right, from 3 to 6.
From 3 to 6, Monday through Friday.
That's right.
You've got a great panel. I'm just going to turn it over to you. Enjoy, thank you.
Thank you, Matt Littman. All right, so as you said, this is a fantastic panel. Let's just go ahead and start this. Sitting directly to my left is one of America's most influential thinkers and a radio talk show host. His daily national radio program is heard by millions across the United States on the Salem Radio Network. Give it up for Dennis Prager. Right next to him is the senior editor at The Atlantic, a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush, David Frum. Next to him, Mr. MVP himself, is the former chairman of the MSNBC contributor, Michael Steele. And then we have the youngest political talk show host in history, now a leading voice at the pro-Trump Great America Alliance, Tomi Lahren. Before we start the questions, we have to address the elephant in the room. Initially, when we booked the panel, Anthony Scaramucci was supposed to be joining us up here. And I'm told by a source in Washington that he has business to take care of there, so he won't be joining us. That business, I'm told, is to hire an intern for Stephen Bannon for some reason or another. I don't know why. But anyway, all right, so let's go ahead and start. We saw a very strange presidential cycle this year where a nominee of the Republican Party won the nomination going against the party's position on trade, foreign wars, some social issues. David Frum, do you see Donald Trump as the next incarnation of Ronald Reagan or Jim Trafficant?
I think it's pretty clear that both the Trump administration and the Republican hold-on Congress are in terrible trouble, both political and, in the case of the Trump administration, legal and national security trouble. I see only dark clouds ahead. Right now, we're in a situation where at the end of, as Congress is about to recess, there are no legislative achievements. The two parts of the Republican coalition, the former Romney voters are going to get no relief from the taxes in the Affordable Care Act, are going to see no tax reform. Meanwhile, the other partner to this coalition, the people who are more enthusiastic about Donald Trump, have been put on notice that Donald Trump is cooperating with Paul Ryan to do a massive reduction of the Medicaid that they depend on. About half the gain in Medicaid enrollment that has happened under the Affordable Care Act happened in Republican states for Republican constituencies. In Rand Paul's the place where Rand Paul is strongest, you've got half the population that would lose coverage if the Affordable Care Act had been repealed. So that there is a split. And I think we're going to see a very demoralized party heading into the 2018 elections, and that will only intensify as more and more revelations unfold from this Russia investigation, which is probably, in my opinion, already the most ominous espionage investigation in the history of the United States, maybe the history of the world, and may only get worse.
Dennis?
All right.
I hate taking issue with my old friend David Frum, but I disagree with every single syllable he uttered. First of all, it is a fraud. It is the largest fraud perpetrated by media in the Western world since World War II. There has been, even the New York Times had an article last week that there hasn't been collusion between the campaign and the Russians. The disgrace that has emerged from the American media is not a surprise to me, but nevertheless, it is depressing. The low moral state of our media that acknowledge that they no longer intend to offer news. They are there as quote unquote, and it's a despicable word because it was used against the Nazis by the French, resistance. That is how they see themselves in the mainstream media. They have a lower approval rating than the president himself. They deserve only an approval rating from people who are already on the left. They have a mouthpiece in the mainstream media. I'll give you one example. They rely on hysteria. The most prevalent hysteria has been collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. But remember the hysteria, this one really got to me because I am a Jew and I wrote a book on anti-Semitism which is highly regarded. It's called Why the Jews? I'm not trying to sell it to you, but I want you to understand. I taught Jewish history at Brooklyn College. I wrote a book on anti-Semitism. I have fought anti-Semitism all of my life. The lie, I called it a lie at the time, that Trump's election had created all of this anti-Semitism, eruption of anti-Semitism in America. Everybody bought it. Even Republicans bought it. That's why the Senate wrote a 100 senators to 0 letter to President Trump to combat the rise of anti-Semitism. I said at the time, I printed it in the Jewish Journal. So you can see that it's not only recorded, I wrote it. It's all left-wing hysteria. Turns out that 90% of all of the threats to Jewish community centers were called in by a disturbed American Jewish kid living in Israel, and the other 10% were called in by a black radical American to frame his ex-girlfriend. Not one was a Trump supporter. Not one was called in even by a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. It was a fraud in the first degree. The problem is, being on the left means never having to say you're sorry, so they simply dropped the thing. It was a lie.
The National Security Agency is not on the left. The CIA is not on the left. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is not on the left. It is President Trump's own security appointees, unanimously. You can watch the clip from the Aspen Security Conference just a couple of weeks ago. Every single one of President Trump's own national security appointees confirms that there was Russian interference in this election with the intent to help elect Donald Trump. If you want to back this president as the Russian candidate for president, be my guest. It's a free country. But know what you are doing and know who you are.
Let's let Tomi get in here.
The American people elected Donald J. Trump. The Russians did not elect Donald J. Trump. So unless you believe that the Russians went in and manipulated the voting booth, we marched a very different march. We marched from the voting booth and we voted for Donald Trump. Well, so I'm so sick and tired of everyone sitting here telling me that it was the Russians, that it was a white lash. No, it was the silent majority that's tired of being ignored that rose up in this country.
The Electoral College, not the we. I mean, non-white people are also part of our national we, and they count toward the numbers which show that 3 million more people voted against Donald Trump than voted for him. He's the duly, legally authorized president because of the Electoral College. But don't invoke the nimbus of democracy to say we did this, because you may have done it, but more of your fellow citizens voted the other way.
So that's your platform. Is that the Democratic Party's platform, that they're going to resist this president? Because I've said it so many times at Politicon, I'm almost getting tired of it.
It doesn't become true by saying it more.
There are those in the media, there's those on the left, that they would rather see Donald Trump fail than see this country succeed. And time again, it's embittered. It's just spite against the fact that Hillary lost, the fact that the Never-Trumpers are upset that Donald Trump was our nominee. So it was Russia and this hysteria.
That's important.
That is such an insult to the American people that might not live in the coast, that live in the middle, that say, no, we want this guy because he's an outsider. We want this guy because we care about jobs. We want this guy because we care about a secure border. We want this guy because we think he can take out ISIS. That's what they voted for.
We are talking. Let's just remember,
Michael, let me get Michael in here.
But the most most unpopular first-term president in the history of the United States.
Michael,
So
on the
the-
subject,
I want to.
Go right
According
ahead.
to polls, are they the same polls that told us that Hillary Clinton was going to be our president?
It-
The same polls?
Michael, on the subject of the election,
It's the same damn math. I mean,
why
math
is
doesn't
it-
go away because you don't like it.
why is it that Donald Trump won in states that George W. Bush lost, that John McCain lost, that Mitt Romney lost, places like Michigan, places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin? Why did that happen?
Well, I think that what we've heard just in the first 5 minutes of this panel is a deep reflection of what I recognized happening inside the Republican Party long before Donald Trump showed up. And I think we missed that reality, that in the post-Reagan period, which has been really the last 35 years or so, Republicans have found themselves adrift in terms of what they value, what they believe, what they're ready to fight for. You get mixed messages from the political leadership at the top on Capitol Hill. You have a very different direction and influence by the grassroots. Now, people forget, but the Tea Party happened on my watch. I know firsthand what this reality is. As national chairman, I remember sitting in a room with 50 people from across the country who made it very clear that they were pissed off as hell at the Republican Party for big government spending, for forgetting the promises made that weren't kept, et cetera, et cetera. Donald Trump put his finger on that pulse, and he understood it better than the other 15 people standing on that stage for over a year, who had an equal opportunity to take him down and take him out, but could not, because they could not communicate with the average American in the middle of the country, those folks in Michigan, those folks in Pennsylvania, those folks across the country who for 30 years sat on their couch after Reagan and said, this is effed up, I don't want to play anymore, moved from their couch to the polls, and they voted. The problem and the challenge the president has is that what does he do with that? Because both Dennis and David are right for different reasons, all right? Dennis has his finger on the pulse of the country. He talks to it every day, all right? David has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the reality of legislation and getting an agenda done that will reinforce what the president said he would do. And that is the sweet spot that the Republican Party finds itself in right now, at this hour. And to be quite honest, the president is the only one who controls this moment. So he has got to get on the same page with his Congress.
He controls nothing.
No, but I'm saying,
he's a plaything of fate.
But that
He is controlled by
that may
events he
be,
doesn't
but
understand
that
and by
may-
a foreign
but David,
intelligence
my
agency
point
which
is-
has a lethal collection of damaging information.
That's
about him.
fine. All of that's going to take care of itself. I'm not discounting that. What I'm saying is that there is a legislative piece as well. There is a deliverable piece that the American people who supported him and voted for him, still expect to be fulfilled. And the question for the president becomes one of importance of how do I do that? And that's the part that I think is going to be more problematic, more so than even FBI investigations, up until the point we hear from the FBI what they finally decide.
So if you say that he's got this big, you speak about these events as if they're taking place in the future. We're a quarter of the way.
Right now.
Well, no, they're in the past. The signature Republican initiative of this Congress has crashed and burned with Republican votes. The Affordable Care Act will not be repealed. I've been writing that since 2010. That did become more true by being repeated. The Affordable Care Act will not be repealed, and it is now a wreck behind us, that repeal effort, with Republican votes. Even if there were no filibuster, it would have crashed.
But you still have ahead of you, you still have infrastructure, you have tax reform, you have a number of other legislative initiatives that the Congress says it wants to accomplish, that the president says they want to accomplish.
They're not there's not a law. This is the end of July. The deadline is September of 2018. If you haven't written a tax plan, if you have no idea what's in it, and the president has no idea what's in it, if your infrastructure plan is just a set of words with no concept, never mind legislative language, those things are not going to happen.
All right, let me get Tomi in on this, because Tomi, this was an election that featured two candidates that never really blew it up in terms of poll numbers. Hillary Clinton was one of the most unpopular Democratic nominees in American history. Do you think this was an election where any of the Republicans could have won, or do you think it's an election where it was a Trump election or Hillary would have been the next president?
No, I think that Donald Trump, and you're exactly right, he was able to reach Americans that felt like they were no longer a part of the process, the forgotten American that said, politics really isn't for me. Everything that this former administration was doing was hurting them, everything that they could see in practice, but they felt like, you know what, I can't make a difference, I can't make a change, no one cares about me. Might as well just go in and work day in, day out, barely pay my bills, barely be able to send my kids to college, and then watch the influx of illegal immigration, and just sit back and say, this is what I have. And then Donald Trump came along and he said, I have not forgotten you. I'm gonna bring you up, I'm gonna bring you into the conversation, I'm gonna speak to you. And those people were inspired. The others could not do that. There are other great Republicans. The fact that he could come up and beat those Republicans because he understood better than anyone else what the American people truly want. And you're right, he has to deliver on that. And at the end of the day, when this president goes in, if he's a one-term president or if he's a two-term president, the only thing that people are gonna remember, it's not gonna be Russia. It's not gonna be all this BS. What they're gonna remember is the jobs. What they're gonna remember is the economy. What they're gonna remember is the border. That's the things that Americans care about. And not all this BS that the mainstream media feeds to us because they're obsessed with it. Average Americans don't have time to be obsessed with Russia because they're working, they're paying their bills.
I want to piggyback on that, Dennis, because when the Republicans lost in 2012, the RNC came up with a postmortem. And they said the party needs to become an open borders party. The party needs to reject its position on any number of issues. We need to essentially do everything exactly the opposite of what Donald Trump did. Why do you think that happened?
Why do I think Donald Trump won despite the Republican Party? Well, first of all, I just want to respond to the legislative issue. A president does a lot more than sign legislation, and he can't sign legislation that the Congress does not pass. He is ready to sign anything to repeal of Obamacare. Obamacare is a road to single payer, which the sophisticates and the elites love because they think that Western Europe is the model since the Garden of Eden. It goes from Garden of Eden to Sweden. This is the way in which the elites look. Western Europe, it's rare for one who writes his own books to advocate another book, but you should all read The Strange Death of Europe. The brilliant British writer Warren, what's his name? Douglas Murray. This man who, by the way, it's just relevant because of the age in which we live to note, he is an atheist and he is gay. And he wrote the most powerful statement about the collapse of Europe right now, thanks to its left-wing elites, its left-wing media, its left-wing universities, and this terribly destructive notion of multiculturalism, which holds that all cultures are basically equivalent. When I was against Donald Trump, he was my last choice. I wrote against him constantly, but I said in my first piece in National Review and Town Hall, if he is nominated, I will vote for him. I kept my word, because anything is better than the left. And this is what must be understood. Whatever the left touches, it destroys. From art to the university in America is a disgrace, and it is solely because of left-wing influence. Let me tell you, if I may, I'm going to tell you a personal story. You know that they don't allow conservative speakers onto many campuses, right? Even Ayaan Hirsi Ali, a black African woman, was disinvited from Brandeis University because she is critical of the way Islam treats women. That is how bad it has gotten at universities. I am scheduled in 2 weeks from Wednesday. I am an amateur musician. I conduct orchestras periodically. I will be conducting, it's a great honor, and I will be conducting at the Walt Disney Concert Hall Wednesday night, August 16th. I will be conducting a Haydn symphony with the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra. The former mayor of Santa Monica has started a campaign not to allow me to conduct. Conservatives may not only not speak, they are not even allowed to show up not to speak. I will not be saying anything while conducting. I may groan, I may hum, but I won't say anything political. And even now there is a campaign to have the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra disinvite me. The fascists of America are all on the left. And unless we understand that, it's over.
David?
There is a long and ugly and un-American history, fortunately not much in this country but in other places, of people who have hated their fellow citizens so much that they have opened the door to foreign occupation and collaborated with foreign occupiers. Do not be that person. Your Americans of the left the Americans of the left are your political opponents. You want to meet them on the field of argument. You do not want to denigrate them, and you certainly don't want to describe them as enemies. As Abraham Lincoln said, they are not your enemies. They are your friends and fellow citizens and neighbors.
Do you think the Republicans
They differ from me.
Do you think the Republicans have sided with the Russians?
I think we have we have got here. We have got here a massive security breach that every Republican would recognize if it had happened to a Democratic candidate, as it easily could have, by the way, because where the Republicans have intervened in elections in Europe, they've often intervened to help parties of the left. They're totally opportunistic. They didn't intervene here to help Donald Trump because they liked Donald Trump. They intervened because they recognized that he was the more destructive candidate, the one who would do more harm to America's standing in the world. Next time they could do it for a candidate of the left, and you will then, should that terrible thing ever happen, you will be looking to honest Democrats and honest liberals to stand with you as fellow Americans to defend
Tomi.
your institutions.
I wish we could find an honest Democrat and an honest liberal. My question is, everything we talk about, you talk about Russia. So you're exactly the
biggest story in
because
the
you're the
country.
to the left, because you're the poster child for the
Patriots.
left.
Patriots.
Patriots care about the American people. The Patriots care about jobs and the economy and what Donald Trump ran on. If all you're going to do is talk about Russia, the left, front and center.
And independence of their nation.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit careful in not narrowing what patriotism is and what patriots are, because as a patriot, I can be very, very concerned about everything you just said. Jobs, what's happening in my neighborhood, the government interfering with how I raise my kids, what I want to do with my life. As a patriot, I can also be concerned about what happens to my country and what happens to it from forces outside of my country who pretend to be friends at one minute, but really are enemies all the time. And I think we need to be smart about that and stop elevating it into a conversation of us versus us. The fact of the matter is, the Russians stuck their nose in our democracy. And it is going to be up to us, every last friggin' person in this room and outside this room, to bunt them in the nose, to push back and tell them never again. I don't care if you're Donald Trump. I don't care if you're Mitt Romney. I don't care if you're George Bush. I don't care if you're Bill Clinton. You have a responsibility as a patriot to get off your ass and tell them no more. And whether or not the administration, and this is what sticks in my craw about the president, and to be very straight up, call a spade, when all your intelligence people, Republican appointed, are telling you this is what happened, don't pretend it didn't. Don't pretend it didn't. Because you undermine the very thing you're talking about. You undermine the confidence we have as citizens that our government is going to have our back when it comes to our kids, our homes, and our communities. If you can't stand up to Russia, if you can't call Putin out right now, when will you do it? To demonstrate to me that you got my back as an American citizen. That's the reality.
David, based on what you said, do you believe that Tomi and Dennis are patriots?
I think we're in an hour of testing, and I think there's a natural tendency. There's a natural tendency for partisans when they hear bad news about their own party not to want to know it. And I remember this from in the Clinton years when Bill Clinton was engaged in a lot of campaign finance violations, which had opened the door to foreign influence in that election. Democrats did not want to hear it. So I understand that human impulse. I understand the impulse to be protective because probably no one here has ever met the president, but you are connected to him by a chain of fidelity and an association, and you believe in your Republican Party, and you are conservatives, and that's, as am I. So it is natural to want to resist these tidings. But the tidings are going to become ever more powerful.
But do you think they're patriots?
So we will all be tested. We will all be tested. And as we learn, I think for most of us outside Washington, the testing is in the future.
Is that a yes or a no?
I'm saying you will have the opportunity to answer yes.
I still
and
don't
no.
hear it.
I want to be clear about something.
I'm sitting
though.
here, it's like I've actually, I thought I came to Politicon and I came to the Twilight Zone. I am mind blowing. If we differ with you on how nefarious a threat to America Putin is, our patriotism is in, yes, it is exactly what you said.
That's exactly
there's an old Hebrew saying, your ears should hear what your mouth said. You were unwilling to answer his question. Can you be a patriot and not think that Putin is the greatest enemy of America? We have so many heavier problems, so many worse problems than Putin. And I remember during the Cold War, when
that's really false.
No, it's not false. You did not answer his question. Can we be patriots? You said it will be tested.
If you want to argue my
I
point,
argued your point.
What I said.
You didn't say a thing. Your silence was eloquent.
What I said. I did not say there can be no difference on how nefarious Putin is, meaning how malign. There can be a lot of disagreement about that. I did not say that the question is going to be how do you feel about the gravity of Russia on the scale of threats. The question that is open is how do you feel about Russian interference with our democracy?
That wasn't the question. You should answer. I'll repeat the question. The question was, is it on? Okay. All right. The question was, can we be patriots if we differ with you on Putin? And you said, we'll be tested, we'll be tested, we'll be tested.
The question is not about...
In other words, we may fail if we don't agree with you.
The question
That's
is
what
about,
everyone here understood you saying.
The question is going to be about America, not about Putin. It's about our democracy, it's about the integrity of American procedures. If it is shown that the president and his team collaborated with a foreign espionage agency, and that has not yet been proven.
And if it's not shown, will you say it's been a fraud by the press? I want it yes or no.
No, because
yes or no.
Because we
if
know,
it is not shown, I want you on record.
No, because we know two-thirds of this. We have the I love it email. It's in writing. I love it. The Russians have a dossier on your political opponent. I love it.
Correct.
That's what the son of the president
said.
Why
is that collusion? It turned out to be nothing. So the press will have lied and you won't even acknowledge it. The press can't do any wrong. I am more critical of Trump than you are of the media.
Tommy. You want to weigh in?
The media, it was Donald Trump Jr. who wrote the colluding email, not the media.
This is the point that I'm trying to make. It's not that an investigation, it's not the merits of an investigation. We can talk about that, but this is what's so frustrating. I think why a lot of young people are dissuaded from caring about politics or caring about the presidency or caring about government and caring about our voice is because we're sitting up here, we're supposed to be talking about now what Republicans, and all we've talked about is Russia. That's not the only thing. It's not to say it's not important, it's not to say it's not a conversation, but to spend all of our time, a disproportionate amount of time, just talking about Russia, that is a failure to the American people. Why are we talking about this? We're going to spend the whole panel talking about Putin and the election. Do we have anything else to talk about? Anything?
Michael, this was an election where the news media picked a side. You saw Jorge Ramos, for example, say this is an election where people in the news media have an obligation to take a side against Donald Trump. We saw even late night shows refuse to book Donald Trump because they say, oh, it's too hot, we don't want any part of that, but they'd have Hillary Clinton and Democrats on. Should Republicans believe the mainstream media?
I can see this from both sides, but as someone who's been at the tip of that spear as a candidate running against the Washington Post, running against the Baltimore Sun in Maryland, where as a black candidate, a black Republican running for lieutenant governor, the endorsement editorial that comes out the weekend before the election, the general election, you know how that happens. The Baltimore Sun wrote, regarding my candidacy for lieutenant governor, the only thing I would bring to the office is the color of my skin. So asking me whether or not I should believe the mainstream media when it comes to how they treat candidates, my answer would be, your eyes aren't going to lie to you, nor will your ears, nor will what they write about you. And the fact of the matter is, you have to call it out when it happens. It doesn't happen every time they print something, but it happens enough that it does raise concerns within the Republican Party. This isn't a recent phenomenon, folks. We've been in this fight and in this space for a long, long time. We can go back and recount what the establishment did to Ronald Reagan back in 1976 and what the mainstream media wrote about Reagan in his campaign going back in the day. So this isn't a new space. What is different is that you now have a bigger voice in it. You have a greater stake in it. It's not just that we have Fox News. We got guys like Prager who every day call out the hypocrisy, call out the lies, and focus on the truth. So we should not be concerned about whether or not we believe the mainstream media. What we should speak to is what we know to be true about what we believe, what we value, and what we're ready to fight for. And we can make that part of the conversation. You're absolutely right. If we want to sit and waste our time on something that we have no control over until an FBI directive comes out or a special counsel finishes a report, God knows when, we can do that. But we will get caught up in their crazy instead of focusing on what we need to do to help this president fulfill his agenda, to move this Congress off its ass, and to focus the country on the direction on the values that we say are important. As Republicans, we've lost that. You ask the question, are you Republican or are you conservative? At one point, they were kind of like the same. There was not this division. There was not this concern. The glue that once held that together was Reagan. He's no longer here. So the question is, how do we go forward? Are we going to be distracted by the BS that comes out from the left? Why waste your time? I've been in that crucible. I grew up in D.C. I'm now living in Maryland. I'm in a blue state. But we find ways to win. We have a Republican governor in the state of Maryland who's at 70% approval in Maryland. Why? Because he's talking about and acting on the values and the principles that we say are important. And we're demonstrating it legislatively, politically, socially, economically. So stop being distracted by the crazy and focus on how we're going to move the country and our communities forward. I'm not worried about the mainstream media.
Well, on the subject of the media, Tomi, not only did the mainstream media come out heavily against Trump in the general election, but much of the conservative media came out against him in the primary. National Review devoted a whole edition to it. The Wall Street Journal was very critical. It seems like every Republican strategist on television professionally hated on him for 12 straight months. Do you believe that you were punished at the Blaze for your pro-Trump stance?
I'm not going to speak to my former employer because I just don't think that would be fair as they are not here. But beyond that, I can speak more broadly about the Never Trump movement and how destructive it was. And the reason I think that it formed, in many ways, there are factions within this party, and factions are not always unhealthy. Sometimes they can move us in a positive direction. They can be, because you have opposing voices, not just an echo chamber. I am all about that. However, to me, the Never Trump movement was so damaging because instead of looking at Donald Trump and really looking at his policies, which some did, they were sitting there saying he's not conservative enough. It was always, he's not enough this, he's not enough like this, he's not, instead of listening to the American people that said, this is what we want our president to be. It's not, does he meet your checklist of conservative items? It's, is he advancing the things that every American, not just conservatives, but every American, because he's a president for all people, care about? And if you ask Democrats, you ask Republicans what they care about, it's the economy. So the Never Trump movement was all formed on deciding whether Donald Trump was enough of a representative for conservatives. I, for one, I don't care about that. And I think moving forward, if we want to get millennials, you want to get young people excited about conservative policies and politics, you have to be able to open it up. We need a big tent. We need the idea and the mentality of Reagan to come back. When you sit there and you tell people, because this is what the left does, the left tells you that you are a liberal, no matter what. The left tells you you breathe, you're a liberal. Oh, you don't hate gay people, you're a liberal. Oh, you like puppies, you're a liberal. Oh, you are on birth control, you're a liberal. Meanwhile, conservatives sit back and say, oh, you know, you're pro-choice, you're not a conservative. Oh, you're for same-sex marriage, oh, you're not a conservative. Oh, you might believe that there's some truth to climate change, oh, you're not a conservative. Why do we do that? We exclude so many people, and the left is happy to take them them. They take them every time. We're seeing it on college campuses, and I got to tell you, this is a shout out to my friend Charlie Kirk, who runs an organization called Turning Point USA, has effectively taken back college campuses and telling people on an issue and an item, if you want to hear it from a millennial standpoint, the way that Republicans and conservatives, which we should be one and the same, are going to win elections for generations to come is going to be on the basis of limited government, not anything else. Limited government is what we're going to be able to sell. We need to do a better job of messaging, and it's going to be up to young people to do it.
David, as a Republican who didn't support President Trump, when you look to Congress, who do you see as your favorite? Who do you see as your type of Republican who's currently in Congress?
I have enormous respect for Rob Portman. I have enormous respect for Senator McCain. I have enormous respect for Lindsey Graham. I have enormous respect for Pete Roskam. I think where the party needs to go, I do think that we marched ourselves into a cul-de-sac in the Tea Party years by taking a position that was not only more radical than the country, but more radical than the real party. That was the real meaning of the vote on the Affordable Care Act. When it came time actually to blow it up, Republicans themselves said, this is too much. We are living in a world in which the American people are accepting the principle that in some way, in some form, and as a Republican you would say with as much market, as much competition, as much private ownership as possible, that we believe that universal coverage is a principle that is here to stay, and I think we have to recognize that. And we have to then compete, and if you won't see that, you're not going to be competing for politics in this country, because that's what this country is. You know, something about the mainstream media. All institutions are imperfect. They do good work, they do bad work. Not every judicial opinion is correct, not every story is correct, not every report from the FBI is correct, not every prosecution by your local police is correct. Institutions are made of human beings and they make errors. But one of the things that is very important for conservatives to do if they want to compete to win and lead in this country is to see their country as it is now and not to be guided by some usually illusion about how it was in the past. I think what we are going to have to be is in this new country the party of markets, the party of limited government. It is incredible to me that such a party can accept the leadership of Donald Trump, a president who makes it his point to interfere company by company with corporate decisions to tell this company you should hire here and this company you should not hire there. If that kind of bullying of individual corporations were being done by any kind of Democrat, we would set the nation on fire over that. But when I think we have, in a way, in the Tea Party year, we had a problem with the Republican Party of way too much ideology, and it was too extreme. Now we have not a problem of not enough ideology. We have too much of a cult of a leader and too much a cult of negative partisanship, defining ourselves not only by what we oppose, but by the people we don't like. And you should look at Americans who disagree with you and say, these are people I must reach, these are people I must talk to, and these are people I must try to convince, not all of the way, but enough of the way to build a functioning conservative majority that can actually, unlike the present one, pass laws and do things, including reducing taxes.
If that's a recipe for disaster, why did the Republicans win the presidential election? They won both houses of Congress, they won record amounts of state legislative seats, they controlled the Supreme Court, and they went in the exact opposite direction.
The Republican victories in the states were very, very real, and that reflected the painful, slow recovery from the crisis of 2008 and 2009. But what has happened at the federal level is an illusion, and I think it's going to be exposed. Donald Trump, remember, won about half a point more of the vote than Michael Dukakis and half a point less than Mitt Romney. If the Electoral College had bounced in a slightly different way, this wouldn't even have been a close election. It wouldn't be Bush v. Gore. It would be a blowout. It would be like Dukakis.
But isn't that a woulda, coulda, shoulda? I mean, if Grandma had gonads, she'd be Grandpa. Those weren't the rules that we played by. We played by the electoral rules, and
we have built a coalition, we have a strong congressional coalition, but we've built a presidential coalition so weak that it can't win without the help of foreign espionage agencies.
Dennis.
All right. I don't know where David is coming from. I've said what I had to say. It's all a fraud, okay? I'm on record as saying I'll tell you this. Why don't we both make a deal? We both stake our reputation on this. I say that collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia to change this election will turn out to be a fraud. He says that foreign espionage agencies will be shown to be responsible for the election. One of us is wrong, and hopefully we'll pay the price, because you have to pay the price. That's the way life works. There is credibility that you gain, there's credibility that you lose. The press said nothing about the fraud known as the Clinton Global Initiative. All right? It's unbelievable. The woman is the first Secretary of State in American history, in my opinion, to sell the interests of her country for her own monetary gain. And I read nothing about it in the Atlantic. I read nothing about it from David Frum or from his associates. She sold America while her husband got $500,000 for one goddamn talk in Moscow. She was selling uranium to the Russians. And there was nothing. The press doesn't say anything about it.
Dennis, you have absolutely no obligation to familiarize yourself with my bibliography. It can't be interesting to you. But the fact is, before saying I didn't write about something, use the Google machine.
Use the what?
Use the Google machine. Before you say I never wrote about something,
okay, if
use
you
the
did,
Google
I
machine.
apologize. I'm thrilled. Tell us what you wrote about Hillary Clinton selling the country
I didn't
while
use that,
she was in
but
office.
I've written a lot about the Clinton
tell
Global
us.
Initiative.
Give us the name of the article. I promise I will read it and apologize in print.
You can.
I will apologize in print. What is the name of the article?
I don't even need an apology.
All right,
It's just a
okay,
fact.
fine.
I wrote about the Clinton Global Initiative.
Now, David, as a Republican who didn't like Donald Trump, did you end up just leaving the ballot blank? Did you vote for Gary Johnson? Did you vote for Hillary Clinton?
I voted for Hillary Clinton. I wrote about it. I gave my reading, as I always do, as I gave my reasons in writing, and they're available again on the Google machine to find out.
Now, Michael, you never endorsed Trump either. Who did you fill your ballot out for?
Pardon me, I didn't hear what the last part.
Who did you fill the ballot out for?
Oh, I voted for Evan.
For who?
Evan.
Little known name, Evan McMullen. Yeah, he was the never Trumper's choice.
I voted, for me, just to be very frank and honest about it, throughout the campaign, I had contact and conversation with candidate Trump, talked to him about a number of things throughout the campaign at various points. For me, the line that was really difficult was the Access Hollywood tape. All right, so can I just, you know what? I don't need that from you, all right? I don't need that from you. I'm giving you my opinion. I'm being honest and straightforward. I really don't give a damn if you support it or not, but I just don't want to hear you on it at the moment. Let me finish my piece. So you understand. Because you know, half the problem is people shut down before you actually hear what someone else has to say. Demonstrates ignorance. So I don't want you to be ignorant if you're going to talk about something that I believe that was important to me, that I based my judgment on. I'm not going to judge you for supporting Donald Trump. God bless you. I'm not going to judge you for supporting Hillary Clinton. God bless you. The last time I checked, this was America, and I was free to choose and do whatever I want, right? So for all you Republicans out here, for all of you so-called conservative Republicans out here who want to throw that up in people's faces every time they have a different opinion from yours, check yourselves. So I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to tell you now where I come from, so you understand.
All right, let Dennis respond, then we're going to take a couple of questions.
Can I answer the question? I'm not, and again, I don't care if you agree with me, people, I really don't. Because you asked the question, I'm going to tell you. For me, that was a dividing line. Because I couldn't look the women in the face that I had counseled as a young seminarian who had been the victims of sexual abuse and look them in the eye and say, yeah, I get that. I couldn't look the mother of my children in the eye and say, yeah, I get that. I couldn't look at family members who had been raped and groped and say, yeah, I support that. That was my judgment. I heard the man on tape.
Okay.
So that was for me. Donald Trump is president of the United States now, and I've been very clear on this on my network, on MSNBC, and anywhere else in public. I want this president to be successful. I want this president to do right by the American people. All right? But in that moment, at that time, that was a judgment call that I made at the last minute. It was based solely on his own words, nothing more, nothing political, nothing personal, but his own words. That was my personal decision.
All right, Dennis.
Okay. I think it's Michael, I totally respect you, as you know. We have a long relationship. First of all, folks, you're allowed to boo and cheer all you want. Okay, I just want to say that. That's why you're here. Your booing does not prevent Michael or David or any of us from speaking on. You are not taking, unlike the left, you are not disinviting him. You are only booing. Booing is very different from violently removing people from a stage, okay? The left is the enemy, not liberals. I love liberals, and I mean that literally. If I didn't, I couldn't love my whole extended family. I'm Jewish. They're all liberal. So I don't have to have a lesson. But I just want to say on their behalf, on one quick other term, okay? I asked the mother of my children, and she couldn't care less about his comment that was made privately that time. So not every woman is sitting thinking that if you elect Donald Trump, you are electing a rapist. We really did elect a rapist, and no one said a damn thing about it.
All right, let's go to the questions.
Excuse me, I was first.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I was first.
My name is David. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I've voted Republican for most of my adult life. I worked on John McCain's campaign. I ran for Congress as a Republican. I did not support President Trump in this election. And something that's been very discouraging to me is the seemingly hatred that we have on our side. Dennis Prager, you wrote an article saying we're in a civil war with parts of our country. And as David has said, David, I have great admiration for your stance and all this and what's going on in this country. But I will not stand here and say I'm going to be at war with part of my country.
All right,
anyone
let's go
that
ahead
is
and
at
let
war,
Dennis
I'm going to
answer
stand
that.
opposed.
Dennis?
Yeah, I stated what I believe to be a fact. I'm not happy about it. I think there is a nonviolent civil war between the left and right. Their differences are unbridgeable. Every show I broadcast, every article I write, I always divide between left and liberal. Our campuses are now leftist. They are no longer liberal. When they were liberal, people of all different ideas spoke. Let me just say very quickly, Barack Obama said 5 days before he was elected in 2008, in 5 days, we will fundamentally transform the United States of America. Anyone who wants to fundamentally transform this country, I oppose with every fiber in my body.
All right, let's go ahead and take one from the back. Go ahead.
Hi, I'll skip the bio. Yesterday at the Vox Populi panel, the DNC announced additions to the utterly uninspired Better Deal platform using the hashtag DNC Takeback. Among other things, the rep announced that the Democrats would add Medicare for all to their platform going forward in 2018 and 2020. 58% of Americans support replacing Obamacare with federally funded health care, including...
All right, this is running on too long. What's your question?
Including 41% and counting of Republicans. With the current state of Trump's tenuous plans for replacing...
Okay, so the question is Medicare for all?
How are you going to respond to Medicare for all? How are you going to respond to the DNC's Medicare for all?
Okay, Michael?
Well, that's going to be, to be quite honest, it's a hard question to answer because, as we've seen after 7 years of a very important rhetorical response to Obamacare with repeal and replace, our political leadership in the Senate and the House could not get together amongst themselves to develop the strategy and the battle plan for what is to come. And so I think it's going to be incumbent on our leadership to decide whether or not they want to do battle against those things that will fundamentally impact the healthcare system of this country, as Obamacare has, or they're going to try to correct themselves, get in. There are 14 doctors who serve in the House of Representatives who are Republicans. You mean to tell me they couldn't have a meeting and come to an understanding is exactly what do we stand for on healthcare and understand how we're going to devise that? So I don't know if we're ready for that battle. But I'll be quite honest, if your slogan is a better deal, I'm just waiting for my coupon so I can get my free pizza. Because if that's the best they're going to come up with.
Deal, it's DNC
Let's take this question right here.
Hi there, my name's Ian from Santa Barbara. I have tremendous respect for all of you, but I think you're both capable of being right and wrong, and so is our president. I think it's important we recognize, he can do good things and bad things, and as Republicans, we should be tied to conservative, like you said, and that we should support Trump insofar as he's supporting conservatism. So my question for you guys is, with the past 6 months, looking back, I don't think any of the other candidates couldn't have done more or could have done less than Donald Trump has already done in terms of advancing a conservative agenda. I think Marco Rubio, who you supported back in the day, was a much better candidate for both then and now. But do you think that going into 2020, we should still hitch our horse to Donald Trump, or should we take a serious look at supporting primary challengers if
Tommy?
nothing gets fixed?
Well, speaking to your point, we're 6 months in. Let's give him a little bit of a chance here beyond that. But I think that, again, and I'm not someone that likes to give someone excuses or give them a free pass, but I do think that part of this, we call this a failure of President Trump. Yeah, it is the ultimate responsibility of the president, but let's not forget the so-called Republicans who campaigned for 7 years on repeal and replace, who were unable to do it. So it's going to take more than just President Trump. He can do more. His messaging can be better. I think that with the new shakeups at the White House, I think that that's going to be the game plan moving forward. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about putting up Donald Trump in 2020, and we're talking about if that's the right choice, I think that's going to be something we need to wait and see. But I think that his agenda, if the Republicans in Congress could understand and get behind that agenda, which is America first, I think that he's going to be, again, an excellent president in 2020. But it is going to be a matter of how well he does. But it's not just upon him, it's upon all those that rode on his coattails and were elected. It's on them as well. And the American voter is not going to forget that. They're going to remember those. They're going to remember the three. They're going to remember John McCain. They're going to have to answer for that too, because it's integrity. You don't run on repeal and replace and then sit there and say, yeah, we really can't even do skinny repeal. That's bullshit. That's not what that's not what we were elected to do. So I think we need to put pressure on all sides of the Republican Party because it is imperfect.
All right, one more question. Let's go to the back.
Hi, I'm a Trump voter, but I also voted for Obama because of health care, so don't hate me, but I support President Trump on almost every issue: Islam, energy, trade, immigration, assimilation, as I put it. My question is about gun control. I'm kind of new to the right. I'm trying to figure out, is there room for compromise? We hear the left complain about the background check issue. I agree with President Trump that terrorists shouldn't be able to get guns, but I also think that law-abiding, trained, ex-cops, off-duty cops should be able to carry a concealed weapon. It actually enhances public safety. Why can't there be a compromise where you get your background check expansion in exchange for national concealed carry?
David?
I have an outlier view on this among most Republicans. I do think compromises on guns would be a good idea for public safety. America has a profound gun culture. It's an important part of American life. I don't know that private citizens need to be able to own giant magazines, and I think intensified background checks, although not by any means a palliative, would be a welcome thing.
All right, that concludes our panel. Give it up for Dennis Prager, David Frum, Michael Steele, and Tomi Lahren.